Perfect timing.
Kitty clock on the button.
Yeah, I literally just switched it on. Fantastic. There it is. Florida is awake.
Yes, we are. Yes. It's kind of...
Oh, stop it.
It's kind of nice.
All right, now. I don't know how we're going to do this. We haven't really thought about it.
Exactly. Names, do you like band names or...
I can give them names.
Identity.
Okay, we need identity for the
They're
group.
the Zurich Dada, no? You're the Zurich Dada.
Zurich Dada.
Yeah.
This is Zurich Dada.
We actually need your help. We want to shake things up a little bit. So the idea is that everybody would sit somewhere not in a desk. So like maybe sit on the floor, or even lay on the floor and touch the ground with your hands.
Can you hear anything there?
Sit against the window.
But you have to get out of your desk.
But you have to get out of your desk.
Close your screens, out of your desks, on the floor or against the wall. That sounds like a...
Everybody on the floor.
Touch something where you haven't touched before.
Okay, so just one thing. If you're speaking, do it very loudly because you've got to communicate with Greg, okay?
Yeah. And once everybody's set, and in a comfortable position, if you could close your eyes, that would be awesome.
Make sure that you have direct contact with the surface in the room in a way that eliminates layers between your body and the materials of the room. So make sure you're touching something.
Touch the floor, touch the wall.
Touch a glass, whatever.
I'm having just a very small technical difficulty. The track is no longer on SoundCloud.
Just find anything similar to it.
Yeah. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
So it's all about card then?
Yeah. And you can participate too.
We might have to go.
I must observe.
Is that okay?
Surveillance.
Gregorian chat?
Yeah.
Architecture is a prostitute, and V-Ray is her pimp.
Plasma. Sight has historically been regarded as the noblest of the senses. During the Renaissance, the 5 senses were understood to form a hierarchical system from the highest sense of vision down to the touch. The invention of perspectival representation made the eye the center point of the perceptual world, as well as the concept of the self. The inhumanity of contemporary architecture and cities can be understood as the consequence of the negligence of the body and the senses and an imbalance in our sensory system. The growing experiences of alienation, detachment, and solitude in the technological world today, for instance, may be related with a certain pathology of the senses. It is thought-provoking that the sense of estrangement and detachment is often evoked by the technologically more advanced settings.
The ubiquity of sensing, 3D scanning, and network communication has made the perception of urban environments possible in a number of ways beyond the visual. Latent in these technologies lies the possibility of constructing space in a way that is sensitive and responsive to the presence of people to produce new ways of creating sensuality in space.
So, as a provocation, we would like to ask, how would we design a school for the blind within the context of a visually hegemonic culture?
Plasma. The fact that the art of the eye has certainly produced imposing and thought-provoking structures, but it has not facilitated human rootedness in the world. The fact that the modernist idiom has not generally been able popular tastes and values seems to be due to his one-sided intellectual and visual emphasis. Modern design at large has housed the intellect and the eye, but it has left the body and other senses, as well as our memories, imaginations, and dreams, homeless.
Analogously, what is the deaf person's experience of an art form that is seemingly only valued by those with fully functioning cognitions? Music is experienced differently by the deaf, responding not to melody or pitch, but to vibration and rhythm.
What is architecture for the blind? What is music for the deaf? There is a notion that music is only heard and thus can only be appreciated by the hearing. While music is felt on a physical level by everyone, the deaf likely enjoy music solely by tactile sensations. What is the analogy in architecture?
In designing the school for the blind, the visual experience will be unnecessary or even ineffective. Navigation and understanding is best conjured through sensation, smell, sound, or taste. In this architectural context, there is no place for renderings. Drawings are limited to acting only as technical tools for the construction and planning of buildings, never to be disclosed to anyone other than the architect or contractor. We must create new architectural tools to represent and design experience that will fully alter the practical studio environment. These new tools must be based on the new building blocks of architecture: texture, atmosphere, soundscape, temperature, wind, fog, haze, smoke, rain, odor, aroma, echo, percussions, natural sounds.
Tear down the walls, pull out the floors, all will be replaced with pools of sensation and gradients of desire.
Jorge Luis Borges says, "The taste of an apple lies in the contact of the fruit with the palate, not in the fruit itself. In a similar way, poetry lies in the meeting of poem and reader, not in the lines of symbols printed on the pages of the book. What is essential is the aesthetic act, the thrill, the almost physical emotion that comes with each reading."
Please open your eyes.
Here's our presentation.
Share screens? Are you seeing that, Greg? No.
Not yet.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Well, we should talk about how this all does.
Let me give you back the mark.
Okay.
Hello. Yes.
Stop sharing screen, so we get you back again. So you're back up full slide. Were you able to hear that?
Yes, I think so, pretty well, yeah.
Okay. So an anti-visual, haptic, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Made me want to pray. So,
Could you find the cat?
oh, now what happens?
Well, now we have to comment on.
Oh, we comment.
Yeah, we comment. It made me think a great deal about the anti-ocular experiments of Derrida, in particular, sort of interrogating the sort of optic dominance of everything. Irigary's beautiful Plato's Hystera. But you seem to be more literally going after an architecture of sensation, not necessarily interrogating the creative process by which an architecture is
We have one line where we mention the tools that are present within the cognitive studio environment and how some of the current ones need to be thrown out and new ones need to be implemented. So throwing out, rendering, and drawing, and implementing experiential tools.
And how about thinking through the
script if you want
can you email that to me so I can email it to Greg?
Yeah.
Immediately.
Well, Mark, should I just jump in at any point? Or?
Absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, I have a number of thoughts, and Mark, I'm not sure. I mean, definitely guide me in any way. You know, if we're gonna address any particular categories. I mean, or
it's kind of interesting that I'll send you this now.
Okay.
But you can see at the end of each paragraph they're saying tail, target.
Oh, good.
Contrast. So they're anticipating.
We did the work for it.
Right. Right.
Quick, send me the crib sheet.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I can certainly discern, you know, things that I would identify in those different areas. I mean, what part of the issue, though, and I think this is something I had in mind, what I really like about this experiment, and in some way it goes against the whole idea, the manifesto and the kind of the Zurich Dada notion is one of the paradoxes of Heuretics as a generator is within the academy is its counter academy, or it's like it's figuring out how can we you know, transform or mutate from school into, which is literate, into an electrate paradigm. Not to get rid of school, but to make school electrate. And maybe, and you know, whether it can be or not, it remains to be seen. But certainly, we're trying to meld or blend those institutions. But one of the things that's immediately within the frame of what you were talking about, and so this is going to be a question, is that that the immediate experience is the locus of reality, and you know, rather than looking at a product as such. And I'm wondering if in the making of this or the preparations for today were, if you could comment on the quality of the kind of experience that you had as a group, whether that is in fact constitutes architecture.
If the experience today was architecture, and I think the thing that we were battling was how do we produce an experiential, tutorial within this space, and with staying, because we knew we had to stay in this room, we couldn't leave because we couldn't take Gregory with us. And so how do we take a very status quo room like we're in and produce an experience? That was really what we were struggling with, and I didn't do it, so I don't know if it was successful.
It was interesting, for sure. I mean, how many times have you seen a project presented in such a manner? And particularly by having several voices, that became a performance. Asking people to close their eyes was actually, I haven't seen that before.
The way to make the method of presenting part of what we were talking about. And it was an experiment because we've never done that before.
So it wasn't as smooth as we imagined it.
But I think, one of the things that we kind of talked about while we were coming up with this presentation was the idea that, in the presentation we mentioned the school
Well, so a question or comment. So, and of course, you know, I'm an interloper in a sense. So, like when the presentation came on, I wasn't quite sure what the relationship was between that sort of clip montage of buildings was with the presentation as an experience, and also what the argument of the manifesto is. Maybe you can comment on that. But first, let me just say, so the cat, like if I had to produce a cat, just from what I just saw, I mean, I would say, well, the theorist is Paul Virilio, because, you know, Paul Virilio has argued that that in fact what should I say, the ordinary person addressed by the contemporary digital environment, which, you know, he argues about the role of speed. You know, we're in a condition of you know, the possibilities of general accident, because the velocity of the world is light speed now. And he says that the condition for this person, we're talking about the apparatus, is the disabled person. That the disabled person, the quadriplegic, the paraplegic, in a wheelchair, connected up with prostheses, is the citizen addressed by architecture today. Just, you know, that's sort of the prototype of the model. So that would be the theory of your cat, and I would say and of course he's thinking about the idea of all of us being hooked up with our equipment and not necessarily moving around through the world, or even if we are, to the extent that we are moving around through the world, we're connected with all of these devices the way, you know, someone in an iron lung depends upon the iron lung to survive. So I think, you know, the argument for design would be to really think about taking, you know, what is now marginalized as sort of the regulations, you know, making, you know, let's say the regulations about accessibility, and making them the standard for all design, something like that, where the disabled really is taken as the model for, you know, for all the dimensions of design. So that would be, you know, a suggestion for how to like radicalize or take your initial principle and really push it from the side of the theory. Could give you some suggestions about how to do that.
I think the choice that you've allowed the design project to be born of the intellectual inquiry. I mean, I don't think you would have sort of said, let's do a school for the blind, unless you'd structured this kind of argument. It's a very unusual thing to do. And then the manner in which you're approaching it is like, how would you think it through, you know, from this very unusual, you know, sort of denying the primal focus of architecture. How would you go about it? I think is a very good example of finding an interesting programmatic starting point, you know, that you can sink your teeth into. My question would be.
And I've lost the image. I've lost the picture, Mark.
Yeah, we've lost you. So maybe I just reboot it then, quickly.
Yep.
So you froze on us. So
I'm hearing you.
I'll cancel and.
Okay.
Or maybe we, if you can bear not seeing us for a second, we'll.
I can.
Yes. So let's do it as we transition between groups.
Perfect.
All right. My question would be not only what would the kind of haptic, because you're really talking about the experience of the architecture being more important, the sort of haptic qualities, the oral, the sensorial, being more important than the visual. And that's one aspect of the problem which is quite interesting. Like, so how does everything get textured? How does everything get measured in terms of its sonic qualities? Which is, you know, rarely. But I would say, how would you rethink the dominant optic logics by which we conceive of things in the first place? And that would take you back to the kind of trope of ocular centrism, you know, which is, and that's the apparatus of perspectival drawing, but even the apparatus of rationality itself seems to be to privilege optics and to a certain extent oral. So light and sound are the two dominant senses in relation to conceptual thought. And all of our thought processes around them. And there's some fascinating I mean, your account of Derrida's glass, for instance, where he sort of says, well, maybe with digital technologies, we can suddenly interrogate, or maybe it's more fecund to look at the bodily senses, which are metonymic, contagious, viral. So if you get a smell, you can't actively remember it triggers association. It's much more like kind of finding information on the internet or something, which is not. So instead of this kind of memorialized imagery of optic, what we put on a pedestal as the model of rationality. Could you imagine other forms of knowing, other forms of creating? But how would you set up a kind of non-optic design process? And I would say glass is an example of Derrida trying to write thinking that the other senses are dominant. Is that right? So the bodily senses are raised to a kind of level of conceptual privilege. And it makes for a very unusual form of literacy. And the one book I know that really frames that is the student of Derrida, Irigaray, the radical feminine philosophist, or feminist philosopher, who goes back to Plato's myth of the cave as the moment of optical privileging, or at least it's the moment in which you identify that optics is given privilege in relation to conceptual thought, and she invites you to go back in the cave and rethink it at this moment of transition of aspirations. So could we in fact conceive of cyclical, aleatory, freely associative modes of knowing, modes of creation? And I'd say somebody like Frankfurt Ballet, Forsyth, Derrida's Glass are examples of trying to conceive of cultural works through a very, very different logic. So you could take it, at the simple haptic level, you could take it at the deep creative level, you could take it as interrogating sort of tropes of knowing, of thinking, of creating. And so again, if you use the happy accident of your cat, and if you then take it seriously and you drive into it, there's so much that you can get to. And that line of thinking, like, could you imagine the other senses being brought into balance with optic senses, has motivated me. I don't think I've ever successfully. The condom squeeze, in a way, is a denial of the kind of delineating, determinate rationality, causal kind of sketch to something. It's a bodily kind of heave that just releases, and you can do multiple of them. And it's a very, very different logic than what we're used to, the kind of articulate rationality of conceptual design. So, again, I think there's many. There's a lot of fertility in this. I think it'd be a fantastic project to take on for Thesis. School for the Blind.
I just feel like there's a bit of a, what I don't quite understand is around your initial interest and like your sort of theory, and like kind of pick a topic initially and like really delve into like this thing that you're interested in, and then like what is the relationship between its function in that role, and then is the idea that you can use it to actually be generative in a design sense as well? Because I don't quite understand that. Like, I don't quite understand how doing this process could help you actually design a thesis, an architecture thesis. Or is that not?
Greg, do you want to address that? So this notion, is it an analytical tool, or is it a creative tool, or is it both? And if it's both, how? It's a difficult question for you. How do architects begin to use it to suggest a generative design methodology?
Right. No, that's absolutely legitimate, and of course the principle of heuretics is, sort of within the context of theory, it's phrased as that any hermeneutics, meaning any analytics, can be heuretics, can be a generator. So you can take a description say, the design of a building, and you can, and that's analytical, let's say, and then you can take the properties that are identified in that analysis and turn it into a prescription for designing something else. Now, so that it can become generative or heuristic. And what interests me here in terms of this movement, we're talking about translation, transformation, translatability from one system to another system. And we know from structuralism that in principle any system can be translated in terms of any other system, because language and meaning systems are topological at their core, at their base. There's no literal, that's the true, and then the figurative is just some kind of spin-off from that declaration. So I think the challenge, what I'm interested in, what I'm really valuing learning from this project and collaborating with Mark and you all on this is the idea of rhetoric here is that a system is malleable. So or it's plastic, I think, is the terms that Mark uses. So the idea would be to find between, like say, a theoretical argument, which proposes a certain kind of an idea, like the principle that the senses can be conceptual, that then we would look at in the level of design, you could look at the question of say, you're all very familiar with the way in which you transform a geometry, that there's a certain rotational principles within 3 dimensions that you can move a figure through, for example, or you can take principles often in architecture classes that I'm familiar with. You'll be given prompts from other fields, dance or literature, and those prompts will have formal properties, and then the challenge for the designer is to be moved to find sort of tropical relationships in one's own system that produce some of these same kind of effects. So I do think that it can be creative and generative as well. Certainly, even at the formal level of say what's the equivalent in my language for that other language. So that would be one way I would answer that.
I mean, I do think there's one of the great tropes we have to deconstruct is this idea that you think and then you do, and there's a division between the two. And if in all of the talks that Greg's given, and it's suddenly we're in a different mode of thinking through doing. I mean, theopraxis is thinking through doing. So there's no reason why your generative process can't be born out of the same interrogation if you let it. It's not that it all has to be sort of thought, and then you have to kind of measure up. Could you devise a generative process? Now, the architect I just showed you, Wolf Prix, I was going to show you before this. He probably he's certainly one of the most celebrated architects in the world. He's risen to the status of Zaha and Tom Main, and hugely accomplished. He began his career, if you look at it, by things like blind sketches. So he would close his eyes, he would deny any kind of program, he'd do a scribble. And the scribble was what got built, and he still does it, in fact. So he and if you can see that as an act of sort of delinquency, just kind of him being a punk. Or, if you really look back from this extraordinary career where he's building the World Bank and he's building BMW headquarters and things like that, if you think back to it, it was a very lucid way of challenging the design assumptions that he'd inherited and of deliberately trying something else. And if you track it through, it took him years, it took him decades, in fact, to consolidate that interrogation of creative method. And finally, it's come home to roost as an extremely effective new potential for him. And I'll try to articulate that. So that's one example. I'm going to look at Tom Main as well as another example of people that are sort of finding ways of generating generative method coming out of their antagonism to an existing condition. So they're not just thinking it, they're actually trying new approaches to it. Let's move on to the next one, Greg. So we did through 4, so that was...
Okay.
And I've sent you the text there, so maybe you can respond. Yeah. Okay, next one. Let me cancel this and I'll call you back.
Yeah.